Hello, it's Film Frenzy here with a movie review for the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe film, the first female-led one in fact, Captain Marvel. I'm gonna get right into the review with my first category, direction and visuals. Honestly, with direction and visuals, I feel like they could have done so much more, and they had so much potential, but even though they weren't particularly bad or anything, they didn't really wow me in any way. And maybe that's just because there's an oversaturation of superhero movies on the market, and you see so much great action sequences coming out, such as from Infinity War and Deadpool 2, Aquaman, even Venom last year. There was a lot, so maybe that's part of it. There were some great spectacles though, especially the ending where you see how powerful she becomes as she gains her full potential and with all the energy and stuff, and she's like glowing and she stops all the missiles and stuff. That was very visually just awesome to watch. And some of the earlier action sequences with the hand-to-hand combat, maybe they're a little generic, but they're still fun to watch and pretty solid. The CGI with the de-aging, especially of Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury, that was spectacular. That's one of the best visual effects of the movie. They did such a good job with that. Same with Clark Gregg as Phil Coulson, and that's his first time in a movie since the original Avengers, so that's pretty awesome too. Overall, no, the direction and visuals weren't like particularly spectacular or anything. Like there wasn't any cinematography or like shots where I was like, that's just beautiful, like some of the stuff in Black Panther or Infinity War, but it was very well done still, and I thought it was well directed and had some very solid action sequences, so I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. Now it's time to discuss Captain Marvel's acting and character development. I'm going to start out with some of the more positives, and that mostly comes from Nick Fury. Samuel L. Jackson is so great in this movie. You really miss him. You haven't seen him in a big role in an MCU film in a very long time. And it's really interesting to see a younger version of him. I think they did a great job with the character development of Nick Fury throughout the MCU. And how you see, like, he used to be more naive. He was more just like a caring, goofy guy, having fun. This is before he saw aliens. He's less experienced in this regard. He's not as jaded as he is in the later MCU films, like when you first meet him in Iron Man and Captain America and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool. He had some great lines. He was funny in it. He just had a fun attitude throughout, and you really see him like progress throughout the film. They did an amazing job with Nick Fury, and the banter between him and Captain Marvel is very solid too, which I'll get to later. And then with Ben Mendelsohn's character of the head Skrull, he was excellent. Ben Mendelsohn is freaking hilarious. He's become one of my favorite actors recently. I feel like every movie I see him in, he just really wows me. And he's really talented. He has really witty British humor that I like a lot. And his character is very interesting. So, spoiler bar, spoilers are done when it goes away. And so I thought that his character, how he reveals that like he's not actually a villain, that was very well done. Usually I don't love twist villains when they're kind of gimmicky, but here when you realize that the bad guys and the allegiance that Captain Marvel has to the Kree people is actually the wrong allegiance, and that the Skrulls are the more persecuted people who are just refugees trying to find a homeland, I thought that was just really beautiful. And Ben Mendelsohn's character is at the center of it. He has such a great emotional core, develops throughout. You really realize who he is. At first, he starts out as this likable, really funny villain, but then he progresses to a great, fully realized character with the family he's looking for. That was a beautiful arc right there. Spoiler finished. And then Jude Law's character, I thought he was pretty solid too. His motivations weren't as best as they could be, because spoiler goes away when done. I found that he didn't really have the best like character motivations for like Marvel villains. Like they did a great job with realizing that he's actually the villain, and that was a really good the twist itself. But the villain that they revealed then, Jude Law's character of Von Rogg, I believe it is, I felt like he wasn't the best. Same with like the rest of the Kree people that originally Captain Marvel was fighting with. They had some fun cameos from like Ronan the Accuser and Digimon Hansu's character from Guardians of the Galaxy, who I forget the name of. I thought those were fun, but they really didn't have a ton of character development. Like Jude Law's character, he really was just there as like a plot element instead of a fully realized character, which is unfortunate because I really wanted a strong villain here. And I felt like we were going to get one with Ben Mendelsohn's Skrull character, but when it was revealed that he was actually not a villain, which I thought was a great reveal, it made the villain kind of weaker when you realize it was just Jude Law and the other Kree people. Spoiler finish. The final thing I want to talk about character development is the biggest flaw of it, and that unfortunately is Captain Marvel herself. So usually with these Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, they do a great job at developing the central hero, but I thought that was one of the weakest elements of this film. There were so many great supporting characters that outshined Captain Marvel so much. Brie Larson's a phenomenal actress, and I'm not sure if it has to do much with her acting in this, but I think it's more primarily with the directing and the writing of her character. And regards to how I felt like she was very stoic throughout, and when she wasn't, she was just kind of overly cocky in a kind of annoying way. Like, she does all these quips during action, which is fun, but I feel like they do that with every MCU character, and like, they gotta stop because it only works with some. Like, Spider-Man's are hilarious, but then when she quips, I didn't find them very funny at all. I'm gonna get into that later with the writing, but I just found her quips like just didn't really fit her character, and it was kind of awkward because she's like this person trying to find her past, and a little bit like Jason Bourne from the Bourne series, played by Matt Damon, except that was done so much better. She just didn't have a ton of relatability, and I felt like she was just very generic, and lacked a ton of fully realized characterization, not as much dimensions as I would have liked, and it just made the hero a little bit less interesting, and made the themes a little bit less potent, because I found the hero just kind of bland. And I read many reviews and they had similar consensus about Captain Marvel, which is very unfortunate because you see so many of these other superhero movies where maybe it's not the best movie, but they get the hero down so well, such as Venom or Aquaman, and that makes the movie really great just because the lead hero. And that really suffers for Captain Marvel when Captain Marvel herself is not a great character in my opinion. Last character I want to mention is Loretta Lynch's Maria Lambo, I believe it is, who's the co-pilot and best friend of Captain Marvel, and I feel like she really did also outshine Brie Larson in that role, and I found her very interesting. She was a great character. She had a lot of great drama. Maybe it wasn't the best written, but she acted phenomenally. She was one of the best performances of the film, and I've read things about how she's the heart of the movie, and I totally agree. She really just grounds the film, and same with her daughter, who was just a fun character. Sometimes they do kids really poorly, and I thought they did a kid in this movie really well, and so I thought Maria Lambo, she was a great character too. Annette Bening, also solid job for the small role she was in. It was an interesting character to learn about. So overall, I'll be giving this category a 3.5 out of 5, mainly because Captain Marvel was a weak character and the villain could have been a bit stronger. My final category consists of the story elements of plot, pacing, script, and theme. So this is a big category, and I'm going to start with the plot. And the plot was okay. Like, it's a pretty standard origin story, besides the fact that they try to flip the order around so the film starts with her, she already has her powers and stuff, and she's leaving Kree and she's trying to discover her past. And I thought that was a good idea, and it was a great noble intention to try and make it a little bit like Bourne, like I talked about previously, where she's trying to learn about her Earth past and then she lands on Earth, and that was really great. That was a great idea, but I feel like it wasn't executed well because they revealed like all the secrets like earlier on in the film, so there should have been a lot more surprises. Like, it was all revealed in like promotions and stuff. Like, wouldn't it have been great if like you didn't know that she was actually human or something, or you didn't realize all about that she was like a fighter pilot? So I think it really does hurt the mystery elements of the film when you already know that she knows all these like other characters, and just it makes the reveals very weak. And it feels like they're not even trying to be reveals, which is unfortunate because it would have been really awesome if they went with the mystery tone of the film, because I feel like that's something that hasn't been done much in the MCU. That would have been super awesome, but instead I feel like they just wasted that potential, which is very annoying. And otherwise it would just be a pretty much regular origin film. It's okay. It does have a solid twist in there that I think really does contribute to the story well. It's not a bad plot by any means, but I feel like it doesn't do a ton. It's just kind of like looking for like a MacGuffin basically the entire time, and you're learning which characters are good, which characters are bad. The shape-shifting element of the scrolls is fun, but I feel like it is a bit underused. It's mostly just used in the first act of the film, which I thought was one of the stronger acts, I would say, for sure. The buddy cop elements were definitely fun, and that was something a little bit different, but I thought they could have been used a little bit more again, and I thought they kind of lost that in the third act, which I would say was probably the weakest part of the film. Moving on to the pacing, I found that actually very solid. It was very consistent throughout, relatively fast-paced, but not too fast-paced, and the 2 hours felt about right. That was a good amount of time for the film. It didn't feel overlong. It didn't feel too short. That was great. Pacing was very solid. Respect that. The editing was very good. It made sense. I will say, though, that some of the flashback integration wasn't the best, and it felt like some of them went on for too long, to the point where you forgot where you were in the present day part of the story, and it relied too much on the flashbacks, almost as a gimmick for just not being that original of a story, so it wouldn't just be like a regular origin story. They were just trying to find a gimmick around that. In a way, it's respectable, but I wish it was just done a lot better. Like Bourne, like previously stated. Then with the script, it was kind of all over the place. I thought some of the dramatic elements were a bit melodramatic and a little cheesy in a way, especially with lots of flashbacks. Like, I'll get into this later, but with the feminist stuff and like the sexism in the film, I felt lots of it was very cheesy, the lines. It felt a little dated in that regards. I guess it makes sense since it does take place in the 1990s. And then with the jokes, I found that lots of Captain Marvel's jokes for some reason weren't that funny. I don't think it was Brie Larson's delivery. I think it was just a mix of the direction of her delivery, and some of just the lines were kind of weak. Nick Fury's lines were almost always hilarious. There was a lot of funny physical humor in the film too, which I really respected, but I felt like the jokes didn't click as much as some of the other MCU films, where that was like their strongest asset. Like, this was trying to be very funny and also have some drama, but I feel like the mix wasn't the best, and when only about 75% of the jokes were hitting, I thought that was very unfortunate, because there weren't like a ton of jokes told. There's a good amount, but maybe there should have been a little bit more jokes, and they could have made the drama just a little bit more potent and strong by just being more realistic and just letting the actors like really shine through, because some of the lines did feel a bit cheesy, and the melodrama is just not a good look for a superhero movie. I was not a fan of that aspect of it. At least that's how it came across to me. Finally, with the themes, so it's definitely a very feminist movie. It's not like Wonder Woman, and I like how Wonder Woman kind of shows you and stuff and makes you think on your own and draw judgments. I feel like this film lacks the nuance that Wonder Woman had, which is very unfortunate because it's very overt with some of the stuff. I talked about the flashbacks, how it's very just over-the-top sexism that just kind of feels a little bit cheesy, and that's kind of a little bit like the action sequences too. There's a lot of cheese in this movie. I'm not sure if it's intentional. It didn't really feel intentional like Aquaman did, and that just left for kind of an unsatisfying theme in that regards. I do like the metaphor of the entire film about how she's just been restrained, all of her powers restrained, because, spoiler alert here, the Kree people lied to her, and they said that they gave her all of her powers, but she actually has so much power that they're not letting her use, and they're trying to teach her constrain and not let her emotions get the handle of her, which were definitely some great metaphors to sexism, and I really appreciated that, but I feel like it just got way less subtle as the movie went along, and they literally say a line about how she's like, I'm not gonna let my hand be tied back anymore at like the end of the movie, and I was like, you don't need to say things so out and out. Like, you can just be a little bit more subtle with the film and let the themes speak for themselves, and that was very unfortunate. So, spoilers finished. I thought that because they were just trying to have like a more universal theme in addition to the feminist thing, because honestly I agree that it's not a great idea just have your theme be about female empowerment, because that doesn't speak to all of the audience. So that was a smart idea to have a universal theme, which I think is kind of about being like human and having like humanity and emotions in you, and I thought that was a good idea. But it was very sporadic, far too sporadic, and it wasn't in the film very often, and it was like here and there. And then also when it was there, just again, there was not much nuance. They literally just say it to you. They don't let you think about it, and the great movies do that. Like recently I just saw Ex Machina, which has already become one of my favorite movies. They present you with a lot of information, and they make you think. Maybe they guide you a little bit in the right direction, but they make you think about it. I feel like this movie doesn't leave you thinking very often, and that was really unfortunate how just it lacks any subtleties in the themes department throughout the movie, so that was very disappointing. For this category, I'll be giving Captain Marvel a 3 out of 5. The plot is mediocre, the script is really high sometimes, really low the other times, the themes are weak, and the pacing is very solid and consistent. Overall, Captain Marvel is a disappointing film. I would like to mention though that the soundtrack is pretty awesome. I like the use of the 90s music inspired by like the woman of the 90s that really was just a breakthrough for them in that decade. That was cool, and I thought it was a decent idea to go on the feminist route. Maybe I would prefer just a more universal movie that just shows you that, like, what women can do, like Wonder Woman did, which is a far superior movie. Patty Jenkins, I think, is a much better filmmaker than Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, at least based on this movie. I haven't seen the previous works, and I thought that the story was okay. It could have been a bit better, and I felt like it just left with a little bit of unsatisfying feeling. There was definitely some very high elements of it, like with the Skrulls and the Kree conflict, that I really, really appreciated, and they did some things right for sure, but I feel like it just could have been a much tighter, better done movie if it was in better writers' hands, because the main character, when it's written poorly, that's really the biggest drawback of Captain Marvel, is that the character itself is kind of weak, and that's unfortunate, because I really think that there's a lot of potential there. She could have been more relatable. They should have utilized Brie Larson's acting capabilities more instead of just making this kind of cocky and out-of-reach character who's a bit too powerful by the end of the film, in my opinion. Yes, it was great how they show that she, like, gets free of the bonds and kind of breaks, like, the sexism, like, that she's been, like, faced with her entire life, and it's kind of great, like, metaphor of the film itself, how it's taken so long to be made and stuff, and I think that's smart in some ways, the feminism of it, but in other ways, it's very cheesy and cliche, which I feel like there's a lot of cheese in this movie that's not in a good way, and it's not intentional, and not very irreverent, and that also leads to some melodrama here and there. So overall, I'm giving Captain Marvel a 3.5 out of 5. It's good, I would say, not great, and that's unfortunate because MCU has really just been on such a great streak. This is definitely one of the weaker entries in the cinematic universe. Still a solid movie, but I was a bit disappointed because I feel like there's just a lot of potential there. She has a really cool origin story, and she could have been a great character, but unfortunately the writing wasn't as solid as it could have been, so I don't think it's a great movie, but I'm very excited for Endgame nevertheless, and I thought that was a fun mid-credit sequence promoting her joining Endgame and the Avengers. That was fun. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. Comment down below your opinions on Captain Marvel, and make sure to like and subscribe for more awesome film videos. I'll see you guys next time from Film Frenzy. Bye.